Why is one of America's biggest automakers collapsing, while China's car industry accelerates? General Motors didn't just scale back, it pulled the plug. Multiple U.S. factories have now gone dark. For decades, GM stood as a pillar of American strength. Today, it's shutting plants across Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. Industrial heartlands now buckling under the weight of a trade war shockwave. These aren't tweaks or slowdowns. Entire facilities are being suspended. And at the center of the storm, China's latest tariff strike, a punishing 40% import duty on US-made vehicles. That single move turned GM's once booming exports to China into a financial disaster. Overnight, Buicks, Chevys, and Cadillacs, once staples on Chinese roads, became unsellable. This isn't a supply chain hiccup. It's an industrial crisis, and GM is the first major casualty. Wall Street didn't see it coming. GM slashed its full-year profit forecast by a staggering $5 billion. The reason wasn't declining demand or a lack of innovation. It was tariffs. In a stunning earnings call, GM's leadership admitted the costs of operating under China's new trade rules were unsustainable. Every exported vehicle, every imported part, now carries a higher price tag, and those costs are eroding profits at an alarming pace. This wasn't a routine adjustment. It was a distress signal. Internally, panic is rising across Detroit. The company is now confronting a painful truth. It relied heavily on both Chinese buyers and cheap Chinese parts. Without them, GM's entire global strategy is at risk. It's now official. GM is suspending all U.S. vehicle exports to China. For years, China was one of GM's most profitable markets. But under Beijing's latest tariff package, sending American cars to Chinese consumers has become financial suicide. Buick models built in Michigan? No longer viable in Shanghai. Cadillacs from Tennessee? Now thousands of dollars more expensive than local competitors. GM executives didn't sugarcoat it. The numbers no longer work. Just like that, one of America's biggest automakers has effectively exited the world's biggest car market. It's a crushing blow to U.S. prestige and a gift to Chinese automakers. But the real question now, if GM can't survive this trade war, who can? This wasn't a simple production cut. It was a retreat. Thousands of GM workers are being sent home indefinitely. Shifts are being erased. Whole towns are feeling the pain. In places like Flint and Fort Wayne, union leaders say the notices came with no warning, just an abrupt message. Operations paused until further notice. These aren't just job losses, they're community collapses. Local economies that depend on the plants, schools, housing, corner shops, they're all spiraling. And yet, in Washington, the architects of this trade war are silent. This wasn't a policy misstep. It was a detonation. And the people picking up the pieces are American workers. This isn't how the trade war was sold. Trump's team promised a stronger America, one that would win. But today, GM is hemorrhaging billions, and layoffs are accelerating. Even some of Trump's own allies are beginning to waver. China didn't just retaliate, it struck at America's industrial weak spots: autos, agriculture, semiconductors. The very sectors Trump vowed to protect are now on life support. And Beijing's timing was ruthless. The tariffs landed just as the U.S. economy began showing signs of slowing. The result? A manufacturing sector in crisis. This isn't a victory. It's a self-inflicted recession. And still, no one in Washington will admit it. While American automakers are crumbling, China is pushing forward. As part of its response, Beijing raised tariffs on U.S. vehicles and ramped up subsidies for domestic EV giants like BYD and NIO. The message is clear: eliminate U.S. competition and dominate the future of cars. And it's working. BYD has just overtaken Tesla in global EV sales. NIO is now entering European markets. And as American exports vanish from Chinese showrooms, Local dealers are filling the void with cheaper, state-backed alternatives. This is no longer a trade spat. It's a market ambush. And U.S. automakers walked into it. Beijing is redrawing the global auto map. And America? It's being written out. Even inside GM, the crisis isn't being acknowledged publicly. In a surprising move, CEO Mary Barra backed the tariff policy. She called it a strategic tool to level the playing field. But the numbers tell another story. GM has lost $5 billion in projected earnings. Thousands of Americans are out of work. And China, the company's second-largest market, is effectively closed. So why defend a policy that's gutting the company? Some call it a long-term gamble. Others say it's political survival, a decision to align with Washington, no matter the cost. Either way, for workers, the message is chilling. The company backs the policy, even if it means sacrificing you. GM once vowed to lead the global shift to electric vehicles. Billions were poured into EV platforms, battery plants, and charging networks. But there was one thing they didn't anticipate: a trade war with China, their top battery supplier. Most EV batteries depend on Chinese materials. Now, those parts face heavy import duties, rising prices, and delivery delays. GM's Ultium battery rollout is already suffering setbacks. Internal memos reveal months-long delays in key EV launches. A company once poised to rival Tesla is now struggling just to stay on course. The irony is brutal. Tariffs meant to save U.S. manufacturing are now threatening to kill the very transition meant to modernize it. And this isn't just a GM problem anymore. Germany's BMW and Japan's Toyota are also raising red flags. Supply deals are collapsing. Trade routes are shifting. Wall Street analysts say the global auto market is entering its most unstable phase in 15 years. What began as a US-China tariff war has become a worldwide supply chain breakdown. Shipping costs are soaring. Part shortages are spreading. Factories from Mexico to Southeast Asia are either scrambling to adapt or shutting down altogether. Even countries that tried to stay neutral are now being forced to choose: align with Washington or pivot to Beijing. For automakers, this is no longer about trade policy. It's about survival in a world breaking into two. And the market doesn't lie. Following GM's shutdown announcement, U.S. auto stocks were hammered. GM, Ford, and Stellantis lost billions in market value within hours. Wall Street heard China's message loud and clear. This isn't temporary. Tariffs are a long-term trap. Analysts at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs are sounding the alarm. Investor confidence in U.S. automakers is collapsing. Supply chains are tightening. Profit forecasts are vanishing. And it's not just stockholders. Bond yields are rising. Credit ratings are slipping. Private equity is already shifting capital to Asian EV startups, firms that don't depend on access to U.S. markets for growth. Wall Street's verdict? This isn't just a blunder. It's a wake-up call. America's industrial base is no longer a safe bet, and Main Street is reaching a boiling point. At dealerships nationwide, vehicle prices are soaring. Inventory is shrinking, and customers are walking out. Models like the Chevy Equinox and GMC Terrain are now burdened with thousands in added costs, thanks to tariffs and supply shortages. Chinese EVs are blocked. European models are raising prices. And for American consumers, the reality is simple: fewer choices, higher prices, and no clear end in sight. Social media is erupting with outrage. Online forums are packed with frustration. And for a government that's counting on working-class votes, this may be a political time bomb. The public's message is loud: stop fighting, start fixing. But here's the most dangerous truth. For years, Washington believed China needed U.S. consumers. The 2025 trade war is proving otherwise. Chinese automakers, BYD, XPeng, NIO, are booming in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and even Europe. Backed by state funds and armed with vertical supply chains, they no longer rely on the U.S. to grow. BYD just posted record-breaking profits, even with the US market off the table. The harsh truth is emerging. They don't need us. We need them. As GM bleeds and contracts, China's EV sector is racing into the space left behind. And what we're witnessing isn't just retaliation, it's a global realignment. The torch is being passed. America's auto empire isn't being challenged, it's being replaced. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.